as we get into Obadiah tonight, let's first of all just kind of ask this question, and that is, who was Obadiah? There's times that we can go and we can take a look at, the like Second Kings, or we can take a look at Second Chronicles, or something like that, and we can kind of get an understanding about who the prophet was. But for Obadiah, maybe not such luck. Obadiah, his name means servant of God, okay? And so that being said, Obadiah was a pretty common name in the Old Testament. As a matter of fact, when you take a look at the Old Testament, there are 13 different men who have the name Obadiah, including the author of Obadiah, okay? And so when you look at it that regard, it's kind of like, okay, well, who is Obadiah? Some people will take a look at different Obadiahs in the Old Testament, and they'll say, oh, okay, well, this person was a servant of God, and he hid away the prophets of God, and so, maybe that was the Obadiah. Well, but he lived up in the northern kingdom, and Obadiah was down in the southern kingdom. And so, there's a whole bunch of different, or not a whole bunch, but there's maybe about 4 different possibilities of if this Obadiah was one of them, but there's nothing really definite or concrete. And so we just got to think, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter who Obadiah was, other than he was a prophet of God that God used to inspire this book. And so as far as who Obadiah was, well, we're just going to have to, give a big question mark about that. Second question is, when was Obadiah written? Okay, so looking at our chart here that we have looked at the last couple of weeks, you notice that Obadiah is over here. And so Obadiah, in this case, is going to be a contemporary of Jeremiah. He's going to be a contemporary of Ezekiel. And there's some people who believe that Obadiah prophesied during that time period. However, there's also going to be some other people that think that Obadiah was written at a different time period as well. And when you look at the book of Obadiah, there's nothing there that kind of gives us an indication, right? Like when we looked at Amos, we saw kings there. So you said, oh, okay, so here's the kings, and then so that pretty much dates it right there. Now there's a little bit of leeway in there, but there's pretty much that's the way it is. But with Obadiah, we don't have the kings, and so we're kind of left with just simply a general idea about circumstance. And does the circumstances of the book match a particular circumstance that's there, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And so Obadiah, what is Obadiah about? Well, Obadiah is not even a prophecy to, well, I won't say that. I was going to say it's not a prophecy to Israel, because it really is. It's a prophecy to Judah. There is part of it. But the main addressee of the prophecy is Edom, another country. And so what really is going on is a judgment to the nation of Edom because of what Edom did to the Israelites, okay? Now, Edom has a long history, if you will, with Israel. In fact, kind of going back to our map that we looked at last week, here we've got Judah up here. Let me change colors here. We've got Judah over here. Edom is going to be this country that is south of Judah down here. And as far as the history between the two of them, it's a long story. Have you ever gone to somebody and, or somebody comes up and says, hey, it's a long story. It all started when I was born, right? Okay. Well, in this case, you could say, man, it's a long, the history between Israel and Edom is a long story. It goes back when they were born, because it goes back to the children of Isaac. We're talking about Jacob, who is later named Israel, and we are talking about his older twin brother Esau. Now, if you kind of remember your Bible history, they had a contentious relationship way back then when they were brothers, right? You know, and that is, you remember that Jacob went and tricked him out of his birthright and then tricked him out of his inheritance. And Esau said, when my father is dead, I'm going to kill him, if you remember that. If you remember, Jacob took off to other parts of the earth at the urging of his mother, because his mother didn't want that to happen. And so there he stayed for all those years serving Laban, then came back with his two wives, Leah and Rachel, and had all the kids, had all the flocks, had everything. And then here comes Esau. You remember that story? And when all of a sudden Esau is coming in, he starts to panic, and he divides everybody up into different companies, because he thought, if they attack one, the others might get away. And, he spent a night in prayer wondering about this. And then he went and he started to divide up and started to send gifts. And so he would take some flocks with a servant, send them up ahead. And so when Esau was coming with all of his men the other direction, Esau would say, "Who are you and what is all this?" And he would say, "These are sent to you, Esau, from my master Jacob." And he was kind of hoping if he hit several of those, that was going to temper the blow. But when Esau got there, you remember that all was good, and they kissed each other, and Esau said, "Welcome back to the land." Jacob didn't go back to the land. Jacob kind of went to a different area. So there's that type of history between them. And this history kind of continued even when the Israelites came up out of Egypt and started to come into the Promised Land. And as they were coming up through here, they wanted to go through Edom to go into the Promised Land, and sent messengers to the king of Edom saying, "Hey, can we come through?" The king was like, "Nope, you sure can't." And they even said, "We're not going to take anything. We're going to stay on the road. We're not going to take your water. We're not going to take any food. We're not going to take any of your land." And the king said, "Nope. As a matter of fact, this means war if you come in." And so they had to go around Edom to get to the Promised Land. So you can kind of see that even at that time, it's still contentious, right? Later on, there were just kind of battles and skirmishes between the two. And then we've got King David, and King David came and subdued the Edomites. He subdued them to where they were in subjection to Israel, or to Judah. And then later on, several generations after that, we see that the Edomites went and threw off the yoke, and there was just constant back and forth war, back and forth between Judah and Edom, or Israel, the northern kingdom, and Edom, and so on and so forth. Okay? And so here we've got this very interesting history. By the way, what we see is that when the Babylonians came in and conquered Judah and razed Jerusalem, that they also came in and defeated Edom as well. Edom kind of continued as a nation for a time period after that, but then some other people came in to where they were and forced them out, and then they were living way down south of where they used to be, and they were called the Eumedians. And do you remember King Herod, the one that went and tried to kill Jesus? Well, that's what he was. And so he was descended from the Edomites, even though Edom at that point had stopped being a country. At least it was, different people. Those people, by the way, actually joined in with the Jews in 70 AD in trying to rebel from Rome, and the Romans just completely wiped them out. And there are no more Eumedianites today, because the Romans just completely took care of them. And so when you look at that case, you kind of see what it is. Now, back to what we were talking about as far as when was Obadiah written. There's two main schools of thought when Obadiah existed and when it was written, based on the circumstance of the book. The book is, Obadiah says, that God is going to judge Edom because at that particular time period, Judah was being attacked and ransacked, and people were being taken away, and it was being robbed. And Edom not only did not offer to help Judah in their problems that they were going through, they even kind of added on to the trouble itself. And because of that situation, God was going to judge them and God was going to destroy them. And the same thing that happened to Judah was going to happen to Edom. So that is the book of Obadiah in a nutshell. It's just simply, Edom, this is what you did. It wasn't good because you guys are brothers. And since you did that, then this is what God is going to do to you. Okay? And so when you look at that situation, as far as somebody coming in and attacking Jerusalem, and at the same time, Edom not really doing much of anything about it, your mind automatically goes to this time period right here, okay? And this time period is going to be the destruction of Jerusalem in 586. At least it started, the main destruction was in 586. It actually started a little bit before that. And so that's the reason why a lot of people kind of feel like it's that. However, there's some people who think that it happened a lot earlier than that based on what was going on in that time in biblical history. And so there's some people who think that it happened right here during this very short 8-year reign of this king Jehoram. Now, Jehoram, his dad, was a pretty good king, even though he kind of made some bad decisions. And one of the bad decisions that Jehoshaphat made was that he wanted to have a little bit of an alliance with the northern kingdom. And if you look at kind of the counterpart to Jehoshaphat, who do we have? We got Ahab. And you remember when we talked about this weeks and weeks ago that Ahab was a really wicked king, and he is more known to who he's married to. You remember who he's married to? Begins with the J. Jezebel. Okay? And so Jehoshaphat kind of wanted to have this alliance with Ahab, and what he did was he took a daughter and then, gave his son in marriage to Ahab's daughter. And so, here you got, as soon as Jehoshaphat was out of the way, then Jehoram, he just simply said, okay, hey, what they're doing up in Israel with all the Baal worship, that's good for us too. So let's get that down here. Let's have all these other things. And, he was not a good king. He was a very evil king. Because of that, what we see that during that time period is that Edom rebelled. And that actually started in the reign of Jehoshaphat. But during the reign of Jehoram, God gave Edom their freedom, and even to the point that Jehoram came with his army to attack them, and all of a sudden, they were surrounded, and Jehoram made it out by the hair of his chinny chin, and everybody else took off in running. And so, that kind of meets this criteria that, you've got Edom, and Edom is kind of, rebelling against Judah. At the same time, you also had a couple of other raiders too. You also had some Philistines, and you had some Arabs that were coming up and attacking Jerusalem to the point that they came in and they just utterly cleaned out Jehoram and his household and the temple, to the point that they went and they took all of his wives, took all of his children except for one, the youngest child. And so, here's this horrible thing where, the Philistines and the Arabs came and did all that. And so some people say this is probably the time period that's there, especially when you kind of look at a couple of different things in the book of Obadiah. To begin with, a little bit of the book of Obadiah is also quoted in Jeremiah. chapter 49. And so, people are saying, okay, why would God inspire Jeremiah and Obadiah to say the same things when they're really contemporaries of one another, especially because Jeremiah is going to be a little bit before Obadiah. And they're saying, okay, based on the certain language and everything, it seems like it's the other way around, that Obadiah would have been the first one, and then Jeremiah would have been the second one. And so, to that reason, it's kind of, okay, God is making this prophecy to Edom back then, and then God is making a similar prophecy to Edom later on. And so that's one reason of it. And there's some others too, but, I won't bore you with it. If God really intended for us to understand it, he would say, in the reign of certain king. And it's not there. So, whichever one you pick, you go right ahead. I can't fault you one way or another, because like I said, if God wanted us to know, then we would know it. Okay? All right, you have any questions before we continue on? No? Okay, well, let's get into the book of Obadiah then. Like I said, Obadiah is a pretty short book, and we can kind of look at it in three different parts. We can look at it in terms of Edom's destruction is predicted in verses 1 through 9. And what we see in verse number 1, hey, by the way, we're going to read the whole book of Obadiah tonight. How about that? Okay, verse number 1 says, the vision of Obadiah. This is what the sovereign Lord says about Edom. We have heard a message from the Lord. An envoy was sent out to the nations to say, rise and let us go against her for battle. See, I will make you small among the nations. You will be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock and make your home on heights, you who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground? Though you soar like the eagle and make yourself nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. And so this is what the Lord is saying to Edom, okay? That Edom is sitting there saying that they are proud, pride, that nobody's going to be able to defeat us. We are here in our stronghold, and nothing's going to happen. But they don't understand that there's some things that are going on in the works outside of it. Now, have you ever heard of Petra? Okay. Petra is an ancient place. You can go there and, have tours and everything like that. Now, you remember I said you got Edom, right? And then the Edomites were displaced by another group, okay? And that is this place that is now Petra. Petra is Greek for rock. And then somebody else came and, claimed them. You can go and take tours of that place today, their old capital. Even though there's like a monastery, an ancient monastery and everything like that. And here's pictures of Petra here. And, you can kind of see from the pictures that, it's up in the mountains. It's in the rocks. I think that's the famous monastery that's there. There you see a little bit more. It's up in the mountains. There's a picture that's coming up here that I think is interesting, and that is, let's see, maybe we're going to get to it. There we go. The entrance into Petra is just this little bitty canyon, in some places just a couple of feet wide. And if you think about especially like an ancient army that is going to be coming in and trying to attack it, if you've got that ancient army into that choke point there, it's going to be very, very difficult for that army to kind of come into play. And so, as far as the people back in Eden, you can kind of see that if we go back to our text, where he says, see, I will make you small among the nations. You will be utterly despised. And in verse 3, it says, the pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rock and make your home on the heights. They're saying, who's going to be able to take us down? Who's going to be able to get us to fall to the ground? Well, even though they had this pride within their hearts, the reality of the situation is that they were quite vulnerable. I think that there could be a very big lesson for all nations to learn about this, including United States of America. I mean, yes, we do live in a great country, and I think that a lot of times people will say, well, we live in a great country because of our democracy, because of our economy, because of our military, because of our innovation, which is all true and fair points, right? But who allowed us to have all those things? Well, God did, and the reason why we have a great country is because God has allowed us to have a great country. I think that if we start to become prideful as a country and start to not acknowledge God and start to do things that are against God and start to think, hey, nobody's going to be able to defeat us because we're the United States of America, maybe we could kind of learn a lesson, especially from Edom, okay? So you kind of see within their hearts what's going on in that regard, right? Now, verse 5, it says this, if these thieves came to you, or if robbers in the night, oh, what a disaster awaits you. Would they not steal only as much as they wanted? So let's just think about this. If somebody, God forbid, is breaking into your house right as we speak, okay, what are they going to do? They're going to take what they want, right? Are they going to take everything? Not unless they want everything, right? But more than likely, they're going to just take what they want and they're going to leave you with all the rest, okay? All right. It says, if grape pickers came to you, would they not leave a few grapes? And so you think about it, if you have a bunch of grapevines and somebody came in to pick your grapes, there's probably going to be some that are left behind, right? But that's not going to be like it is with what Edom was about to face. In verse 6 it says, but how will Esau be ransacked, his hidden treasures pillaged? All your allies will force you to the border. Your friends will deceive you and overpower you. Those who eat your bread will set a trap for you, but you will not detect it. And so, here they are, they're thinking everything is safe, but really, in all actuality, the people, the nations that they think are their allies really are not that way. They think that, everything is all well and good. It is really not the case. It says in verse number 8, in that day, declares the Lord, I will destroy the wise men of Edom, men of understanding in the mountains of Esau. Your warriors, O Teman, will be terrified, and everyone in Esau's mountains will be cut down to the slaughter. Okay, so Teman is another name for Esau, okay, or Edom, okay. All right, so as far as this destruction that's predicted, there we've got it in the first 9 verses. But now we've got the reason for that destruction from verse 10 or 11 on down through verse number 14. Continuing on verse 11, it says, on that day you stood aloof while strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem. You were like one of them. Now, who is, where it says there, on that day when strangers carried off his wealth, who is him? Who is his? It's Judah. Okay? And so here's Edom, and here's somebody coming in and attacking Judah and carrying off all of his wealth and casting lots for Jerusalem. Okay? When all of that was going on, it says, you were like one of them. Okay? And so instead of just simply, staying out of it, instead of helping, which is something that they should have really done, what they were doing is they were actually giving some sort of aid to the people that were doing that. Verse 12, it says, "You should not look down on your brother in the day of his misfortune, nor rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their destruction, nor boast so much in the day of their trouble. You should not march through the gates of my people in the day of their disaster, nor look down on them in their calamity in the day of their disaster, nor seize their wealth in the day of their disaster. You should not wait at the crossroads to cut down fugitives, nor hand over the survivors in the day of trouble." And so this is what Edom's doing. I mean, these other people are coming in attacking, but then Edom is jumping on board. And Edom is coming on, and they're attacking as well. And not only are the other people coming in to Jerusalem, but Edom is coming into Jerusalem. And Edom is robbing Jerusalem and the people of Judah to begin with. And what do you think about verse number 14, where it says, "You should not wait at the crossroads to cut down their fugitives"? And so what Edom was doing is that, they're thinking, okay, here are these other people attacking Judah and Jerusalem, and so people are going to be fleeing, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to be thinking, okay, here's the road that's going to be coming down from Jerusalem, and so what we're going to do is we're going to be right at a strategic location, not to give help and aid to the people who are fugitives and fleeing, but instead to attack them. And so here they're leaving one place of being attacked, and they're going to another place and being attacked as well. And not only that, but he goes on to say they're handing over the survivors in the day of trouble. And so, here are the people who are surviving these battles and everything. Then what they're doing is they're taking them and they're giving them back to the people that were attacking Jerusalem to begin with. So, you talk about something that was pretty despicable. That's pretty despicable, isn't it? It is. And it's pretty despicable, but then when you stop to think about who this is really occurring and happening to, right? This is Judah. This is Israel. This is the country that God had a covenant with Abraham. You remember that covenant was, I'm going to bless those that bless you. I'm going to curse those that curse you. And so Edom, I think that they're especially in this boat because they are related to Israel. You would think that, okay, hey, you know what? These people are our kinfolk. These people, we have our differences, but we at least share a common bond with. And since they are going through all this trouble, what we need to do is we need to help them because, if they understood that covenant, believe that covenant, they'd be thinking, I'm going to bless them. Going to curse those that curse them. So I better wind up blessing them instead of cursing them. Okay? Now, you kind of think about today, in today's circumstance, right? Here we've got, people who are attacking Israel. Okay? And it seems like people in the world have some very, very strong opinions about it. What should we be doing as far as, the United States of America or, just individual Christian people? We need to help them, because I think that promise of those who bless Abraham will be blessed, those that curse Abraham will be cursed. I think that still holds true today. And no, we don't have to agree with everything that Israel does. No, we don't have to just simply do whatever Israel wants. But at the same time, I think that we need to be there to bless them. I think we need to be there to help them. And if we certainly, go onto the side of going against Israel, I think we might wind up finding ourselves going against God, which is a really terrifying, treacherous place to be, unless, of course, people's hearts are so prideful that they're like, doesn't make any difference. We can do whatever we want to, right? Okay. All right. Any questions or comments about that before we move on to the last little section there? All right. Well, in the last little section here, we've got the day of the Lord. Now, the day of the Lord. Does anybody remember what the day of the Lord means? Is it an actual 24-hour day? No. If you remember, the day of the Lord means a time period where God is going to judge, and God is also going to deliver. Okay? And we see that in the Old Testament sometimes in terms of God judging individual nations. But more often than not, we're really talking about is when God is ultimately going to judge sin and God is ultimately going to deliver things. Now, when you take a look at Edom, all this destruction that occurred with Edom, when did it happen? That's a pretty good question. I don't know if I necessarily have an answer to it. I kind of think that maybe, as far as this destruction that took place, is actually something that kind of happened down throughout the centuries, because if you think about it, where is Edom today? It's no more. There's no more Edom today. When did that happen? Well, it could have happened, way back before the Babylonian captivity as far as some of it. It could have happened during the Babylonian captivity as far as other destruction. It could have happened after they got run out of town and, had to change their name and everything. Or it could have happened when the Romans completely annihilated them in 70 AD. But, you think about the totality of the judgment has already happened. But if you think about the remainder as far as the deliverance of God's people, it's something that is still yet to happen. Now, take a look at verse number 15. It says this: the day of the Lord is near for all nations. So we're not only just talking about Edom, are we? We're talking about everyone. It says, as you have done, it will be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your own head. Just as you drink on my holy hill, so all nations will drink continually. They will drink and will be as if they had never been. But on Mount Zion, there will be deliverance. By the way, does anybody know what Mount Zion is? It's Jerusalem. Okay? As a matter of fact, Mount Zion is where the temple is, but it's Jerusalem. It's a temple. And so when you say, here is this judgment that happened on Edom, but on Mount Zion, Jerusalem, there is going to be deliverance. It will be holy, and the house of Jacob will possess its inheritance. The house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. The house of Esau will be a stubble, and they will set it on fire and consume it. There will be no survivors from the house of Esau. The Lord has spoken. It's interesting that, all this has been the judgment of what's been going on to Judah, right? But now all of a sudden we're talking about the house of Jacob, okay? So you remember back when I was talking about before, who is Jacob? Well, Jacob was Esau's brother, okay? And Jacob had his name changed to Israel. And so we're not just talking about Judah here, are we? We're talking about the totality of Israel. Now back in that time, unless it was after the Babylonian captivity or during the Babylonian captivity or right before it, you had those nation of the northern kingdom and you had the southern kingdom, okay? And then after the northern kingdom went into Assyrian captivity, you still had the southern kingdom. But now we're talking about, the totality of Israel. So when do you think that was going to take place or will take place? Well, it's going to be in our future, isn't it? Okay. And you notice that he says that the house of Jacob is going to be a fire and the house of Joseph a flame. What do you suppose that means? Do you think that's a bad thing or do you think it's a good thing? In this case, it's going to be a good thing. Yeah, okay. Because where it says the house of Esau will be stubble, so we're talking about, the little bitty field, it's all cut off there, okay? In verse number 19, he says, the people from Negev will occupy the mountains of Esau, and the people of the foothills will possess the land of the Philistines. They will occupy the fields of Ephraim and Samaria, and Benjamin will possess Gilead. The company of Israelite exiles who are in Canaan will possess the land as far as Zarephath, and the exiles from Jerusalem who are in Shephard will possess the towns of the Negev. Deliverers will go up on Mount Zion to govern the mountain of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's. Okay? And so some of that was kind of taking place in the past, but I think that the main thing is going to be in the future when the Lord returns, and that Israel is going to be the world capital. Okay, you got questions about any of this? It's a short lesson because it's a short book. Are you okay with that? Okay.